And today it'll just be me, Rebecca. So short and solo drunk cast. Well, podcast. I'm not exactly drunk right now. I'm not even buzzed. I mean, it's noon. Merry Christmas, everybody. It might be, it might be Christmas Eve, but you know how it goes. I'm sorry, I'm still getting set up and orientated and all that stuff. My internet is running slow today, so let's see. Things should be running. Pop out the chat. Why not? I actually restarted right before this, but it's not really doing much. My internet speed has been really finicky lately. It says that I'm live, but whatever. That's probably just the lag talking. So in about an hour, when the lag check catches up, you might see what I'm talking about here. Anyway, good afternoon, everybody. After that prelude, it is noon on Christmas Eve, and I've decided that I wanted to do a short podcast. Usually what we do is 8 o'clock to 9 every Saturday, if anybody in our small audience has gotten accustomed to that. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about this week is about some writing woes that I have, actually. Something that I've been wanting to draw upon for maybe other characters rather than my own experiences. It's kind of my own experience, but then applied through a bunch of, different means. I have spent a lot of years doing, world building, character writing. I've made up some species, some races, that kind of thing. I have one story where there are a bunch of governing spirits of a world, and they've all created their own people, that kind of thing. And so part of that is developing what the general mythology is in the world, what actually happened, and how it's interpreted through all of those different cultures. And that's part of something that I want to explore right now. The reason that I'm having this as a topic on Christmas Eve is because of some family traditions and habits and stuff that we've kept through the years that are just kind of a cultural byproduct that we might not even really understand, remember, or know the origins of. But it's just something that's a holdover that speaks to our heritage. I've got a lot of Europe in me. So, I'm all Europe. I can list it off. My mom's side, I'm Polish and Italian, and on my dad's side, I'm Czech, Scottish, Irish, and German. But the thing is, there isn't much holdover from that. It's just, your typical sort of, what you think of when you think of, you have your Americans celebrating Christmas, that kind of thing. Or Americans on Thanksgiving. My mom's side, however, has always been predominantly Polish, and that's sort of what's dominated anything culturally in terms of how we celebrate things. And even then, it's just slight. I'm fourth generation Polish here. My babci and dziadzi that's one of the things even. I call them my babci and dziadzi, but they are my great-grandparents. My Grammy knew Polish for a time, but because she didn't regularly speak it, she really didn't retain it. My babci and dziadzi most likely spoke Polish because I'm pretty sure both of their parents, my great-great-parents, on their side, came over from Poland. I'm not even sure if they were born in Poland or in here, or if they had siblings. I'm pretty sure my dziadzi had siblings that were born in Poland, at least. Fun fact, his name was Benjamin, but it was actually changed by the nuns for sounding too foreign. His name, I think, was Boleslav, before the nuns changed it to Benjamin, a nice, good Catholic boy name. So that's pretty much where I'm coming from tonight with Christmas Eve. One of the things that I always just assumed, when you're a kid and you're growing up, you just assume the way that your family does things is the way that everyone does things. And that's actually an interesting phenomenon to me. So some of the habits that your family has just doesn't even come off as weird, or you don't even think of it as noteworthy. And that's something that I have trouble with writing. I have a lot of characters, and I want to find a way to sort of subtly differentiate them. For me, as someone who's, Polish Catholic. I mean, again, this is also part of a way of holding over traditions for something that you don't even observe. I grew up Catholic. My whole family grew up Catholic, except for my grandma, rest her soul. She was Protestant, but otherwise it's just a sea of Catholicism here. I mean, I was confirmed with the Catholic Church and everything back when I was like 13, 14. But here's the thing. I haven't attended church for years. I celebrate the holidays more out of a closeness with family rather than actually believing. I have a lot of respect for people of faith who don't feel the need to like shove it down other people's throats, because the thing is, you do what you do to just cope with this world, and you do what you do that makes you comfortable and makes sense. As long as you're comfortable with yourself and how other people like may believe or not believe, that's fine. I just don't subscribe to Catholicism or Christianity or anything really. But we still celebrate Christmas and we still celebrate Easter more out of what it brings to... For fuck's sake. It's a good thing this is recording. There we go. Anyway. Anyway, hello, single viewer. I have a single viewer. Anyway, part of this is, I just want to say that this is what I go through with my family. It mostly comes out on, the holidays that we observe, which is, of course, mostly Christmas and Easter, and that's mostly where it comes out, especially Christmas. But here's the thing with my family that I didn't realize was like a thing. I think it's a Catholic thing, if Miche has any indication. On Christmas Eve, for my family, you don't eat meat. And it's a bigger to-do than Christmas is, to be honest. I mean, even apart from the fact that my family, that our house is the one that hosts Christmas Eve every year, we seem to do, like, a lot more, and it seems to be a lot more formal than what we do on Christmas Day. On Christmas Day, you can just dip out whenever you want, as long as you've stayed for a long enough time, as long as presents have been done, and you've eaten, and you've said hello and Merry Christmas to everybody. On Christmas Eve, you're here for the long haul. My mama actually took the last 2 days off from work to sort of, like, mentally prepare, but also to get, like, everything together. She started prepping everything for cooking yesterday. And we asked her, hey, do you need any help? And she's like, no, I don't need help. But anyway, part of that is there's a few things that we do on Christmas Eve. And that's the płatek, the mushroom soup, and, no meat, whatever, that kind of thing. And that's mostly what we hold over from being Polish. Last year we made, not last year, but the year before, we made some kick-ass pierogis also. All potato, and I think we might have had some cabbage ones in there. But I looked it up, and I looked up what was traditionally like done with a Polish Christmas Eve, and I could see where we have stuff. Also, funny thing, my Grammy for years was making the mushroom soup before my mom took over making the mushroom soup. My Grammy apparently made it with chicken stock. You're not supposed to eat meat, man. You're not supposed to eat meat. Anyway. So that's like some of the small things. I mean, I called my great-grandparents Babci and Jaji. Like, that's just like a small, like, cultural holdover that we've had. And when I was young, I didn't even know that Babci and Jaji wasn't a thing that other people didn't have. It's like, oh yeah, it's my Babci and Jaji. What's a Babci and Jaji? And it's like, you don't know what a Babci and Jaji is? Doesn't everyone have a Babci and Jaji? But even then, I was using it incorrectly in terms of a Polish context. I think. I'm not even sure if that's how it's properly pronounced. All I know is that's how we pronounce it. That's even the other thing. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that I think about sometimes. Like, the other thing, when we were kids, like, the kid-friendly, silly word for butt was, dupy, right? Which, I don't know how it's pronounced in Polish, but it comes from dupa, is how it's spelled, is D-U-P-A. And apparently that's Polish, and it's informal for, like, ass or something. I really need to look it up. I don't know. I'm only, like, learning Polish on Duolingo. That's nothing else going on there. But, that was another one. And then it's just sprinkled throughout our family. Is sort of like that hard-working Catholic Polish girl attitude sort of thing. Is hammered throughout on my mom's side very heavily. And it goes more into what you stereotype Polacks as in the US versus what's actually Polish. So it's just generically Slavic, I guess. But like I said, we have some holdovers. Like, all my great-grandparents babci and jaji. We have the word, like, dupi is what we use for butt. It used to just be a funny word, and then I finally asked my mom, and she's like, oh, it's Polish. And I'm like, oh, okay. We do the mushroom soup. We do pierogies sometimes, some years. And to bring it back around, it's these little things that are maybe generally unremarkable as a person. Generally, like, not really very noteworthy, just a sort of single comment, oh, and it's good deal. But with real people, that's just something that you find in everybody. In characters, I want to reflect that a lot. Whenever you try to work with different cultures in characters or different races, it's either all or nothing is one of the things that I noticed. If you're not based off of your own experience, if you're not a part of that culture, you either go 100% that culture or 0% that culture. It might as well just be any other character with a different, like, color palette. But, one of the things that I want to try reflecting is some of the more subtle aspects, the kinds that I've described. Like, whether or not you eat meat on a certain day, whether you keep certain, like, practices or not, whether you call your grandparents by another, like, not by grandma or grandpa, maybe just, like, by babci and jaji, like I said. Maybe you have some words for stuff that you don't, like, that you didn't really, it doesn't occur to you isn't English or something. I'm using English because that's my standard language. It's my first language. Like, it didn't occur to me that these were words from another language. I just thought that they were cute, like, nonsense words that my parents whipped out when we were, like, 4. So that they wouldn't have to say wiping your ass, wiping your butt. It's just you're wiping your duck. And I'm saying this as the perspective of somebody who very loosely practices stuff out of habit, out of family tradition, out of just different reasons. And it makes me think. It's a kind of perspective I want to see from other cultures. And whenever I try to do some sort of research into saying, whenever I try to do research into, say, like, anybody who loosely practices any other religions, like, if I want to do some research into Judaism, Hindu, Islam, anything like that, I want to find loose practices, but then I find pretty much all the information that you could ever want about every aspect of it. But how do you know which ones are the ones that stick and which bits of it are the ones that don't? Which parts do you not let go of? Like, despite generations of not active practicing, or even not even understanding why you practice what you do. And that's actually what's stalling me on one of my stories, is that I have a character who's, I'm like, the example that I always throw out there is 4th gen Indian, loose practicing Hindu. What does that look like? What's the daily life? Like, what are the small things of that you can incorporate to show that? Because I think that's what can make some characters much more interesting, and what I think kind of holds some back. And a single person's perspective is, I would like to see the perspectives of everyone else. That's why I share the very small, very limited bits of what it is to be Polish Catholic, Again, I mean, my last name is apparently Irish. I have no idea. My grandpa always waffled for a while. He said it was Czech, but for a while he said it was Czech, but it's, if anything, Peason originated in the UK. And for some reason, its prevalence is it just, like, throughout Norway, the UK, the US, a little in Australia, and inexplicably Southern Africa. Shout out to Mick Butts, my only viewer right now. Hey, you're just missing me talking about some writing woes that I have in terms of small ways to indicate a character's, like, culture and heritage and junk. And I'm sharing the small aspects that I've sort of picked out of my life as a result of my culture and heritage. And Merry Christmas Eve to you too. Anyway, that's actually why I'm casting so early today, is because Christmas Eve dinner is really, really important to my family. Not just because my mom becomes a neurotic mess when she makes it. No, like, what happens is it's a big sit-down meal. We have 2 tables butted up against each other because we're going to have 17 people sitting around it. And our usual menu is shrimp scampi, some fish, Caesar salad, some zucchini and carrots, and mushroom soup. And then we have a huge variety of desserts. The difference, I've actually talked to Mije about this, and Mije says that on Christmas Eve where she is, they don't have, like, they fast mostly on Christmas Eve, and they're not allowed to eat sweets. And I thought that was funny because we go so overboard on the sweets here. So, another, like, bit of a cultural difference there. And I say that, like, as an American, I think a lot about, like, these small differences, because for us, it's a heritage thing, not a nationality thing. I'm American. My family is American. The people who live next door to me are American. Their heritage is going to be different from mine. They're going to have a lot of different things that they do because of that heritage. Or they might not have any that are different at all because we share a nationality. Which makes it very interesting when I talk to people outside of the U.S. But that's why I'm sharing that. That's why I'm casting now, is because it's a constant writing problem that I have. It's something that's stalling one of my stories right now, is that, like I said, I have a 4th-gen Indian, like, that lives in a house that loosely practices Hindu. He has a cousin that's more interested in it because she's just kind of re-exploring their culture kind of thing. And that's a bit of what's going on there. I mean, there's another character in that kind of shares my experience as being sort of just, like, out of touch, but has some holdovers. And that kind of thing. I actually did make a blog that I will link at a later date about sharing these kinds of differences, or looking for these kinds of differences. Because as a writer, one of the problems that I have is whenever I try to look up about a specific culture, you have to dig hard to find what you're looking for, or to find what I'm looking for. If I try to look up anything about non-white cultures, it's always going to be about how white people can never understand, either that, or 2, how if you're going to write a character of a race or culture, they need to represent it and know it inside and out 100%, no matter their age, situation, or whatever. And I'm like, you guys really just don't seem to understand how characters and people work, do you? And I don't know. It's like, again, that's purely from an American perspective, but the thing is, I'm writing American characters. They're not all going to be in touch with their culture. And not all of them are even going to be interested in pursuing an interest in it. Like I said, I'm more in touch with being Polish than I am with being Czech. I really don't even think about being Czech. I don't think about being Scottish or Irish or German sometimes. I don't even think about being Italian. Like, that's all in my background, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm a Polish gal, man. As far as I'm concerned, I'm Polish-American to some extent. The other ones are just incidental to my identity. But I think it's because that's what I grew up around. One of the things that renewed my interest in it, actually, is we have a Polish deli here called Halinka's. And I went in there once for my Grammy to get her the sausages she liked, the soup she liked, the cheesecake. And I was in there, and it was really nice. They had a lot of stuff from overseas. And while I was waiting, a bunch of people came in, and they were just all speaking Polish around me. And I felt, like, isolated from a lot of stuff, like, a part of me. And that was just a weird experience. That's part of why I'm learning Polish now, is because of that, things like that. I just don't like not knowing stuff. And I don't like not knowing stuff that pertains to me in some way. And so that's just one of the things, one of the pursuits as a writer, is that I'm always trying to know stuff. And I'm always trying to portray stuff apart from myself in a good way. And I always want to be able to tackle things that that I probably, like, would be afraid of tackling. That kind of thing. I mean, I just want to write a story about two best friends falling in love with each other, but I still want to, like, have some sprinkles in of sort of a cultural identity in there, or kind of like one of those, it's like, I don't know. That's one of the writing problems that I have, is that there aren't enough good resources for how a person relates to some concepts, how a person relates to their religion, how a person relates to their culture. There's more about, like, the history of a culture, the significance of pieces in culture, but I feel like there needs to be some better writing guides. Not like a history lesson, but how to write with it. What kind of, like, themes you can develop with what you're given. What sort of, like... one of the things that I really like, that's just occurring to me now, is if you look at, like, old legends or mythology or folk tales of certain cultures, what themes, what writing devices, what storytelling devices are put in there. I would like to know that if you want to write a character that's, like, closely tied with their culture, so that their arc can maybe reflect that a little. It depends on what you're trying to get out of a character, what you're trying to portray with a character. And I think that's some of the raddest shit out there, man. And I want my characters to be more than just an extension of me and my experiences. I want to try to put in other experiences, and it's one of those fears that I have as a writer and an artist, that I'll mess it up. And that's one of the things that stalled me for a long, long time. One sec, I need to take a drink. I know it's noon, but I'm still putting vodka in my Dr. Pepper. I'm only having one for this hour, though. Taking it slow. Oh, by the way, my vodka bottle count is now 3. I'm on my 3rd bottle as we close out the year. And, maybe I'll slow down next year. Who knows? But, yeah. So shout out to my chat, Mick Butts. Do you have any questions or comments about, like, what's going on here? You want to join this conversation? It's just you and me. We'll give that silence a little bit for the lag. Nastorovia. I could use a little more. Barely getting burnt. That's another thing. It's, McButts asks, what other things do you do for Christmas? Well, after Christmas Eve, on Christmas Eve, after we eat dinner, after we have dessert and all that, we open some presents. But, after that, whoever's going to stick around our house sticks around. And, on Christmas itself, the next day, we wake up, we do our thing. Some of our family goes to church, some of our family doesn't. My mom might or might not go to church. I know we stopped going to church a while ago, and I think it's my fault, because I stopped going to church. But, like, I stopped because I kind of feel physically sick in churches these days, because I feel like I'm disrespecting the faith by being there. Not by celebrating the holiday, obviously, because that's a family thing, that's a thing, but I'm not going to go into a person's house of worship to sit there and think, like, about guys banging while I ignore the entire service. I mean, I might go back to church someday just to brush up on what it's like, just to remember it. Also, can I just say that I hate how they changed "and also with you" to "and with your spirit." Oh, and anybody else who grew up Catholic, like, who else watched Star Wars, and whenever they said, "May the Force be with you," you always wanted to respond, "and also with you"? Anyway, on Christmas itself, my aunt actually hosts Christmas. And we just wander over there, we open presents, we converse, we eat some food. It's more of a buffet style, last I checked. And, of the last 2 years, I kind of dipped out early, you know? I dipped out early so that I could be home alone and just do whatever I wanted. I know that this year I need to finish a certain picture for one of my friends, and then slap it all over Redbubble. It's what we call the Sona Lisa, my friends. And it's going to be a beautiful work of art. But otherwise, our Christmases are fairly unremarkable. I think about back when it meant a lot more to me. When, back in the 90s, when we first opened up, I was 8 in the 3rd grade, and, I opened up a Game Boy and Pokemon Red and Blue, and me and my brother and sister had to share it, which was funny because there's only one save file to games, so it was more like one of us got red, one of us got blue. And then my brother was left in the cold because he was 4 years younger than me, so it was just like, yeah, whatever. But, I remember getting Pokemon. I remember the lights in the house being dimmed and only being lit by, like, Christmas lights. I remember I'm not sure even if it's accurate or if it's just, like, what I feel like, but I just remember when our dining room and our front living room were switched and our tree was in a different room. I remember when our dining room was able to fit all of us because we were tiny little kids. I remember just decorating the tree and being more enthusiastic about it. I remember when we got a real tree instead of an artificial tree, but let me tell you, I love the friggin' artificial tree. You have no idea. I remember when we had a real tree and our dog Sabrina would drink she would drink the water out of the bowl that we kept it in. She would eat some of the edible ornaments off the trees. But those days are gone, man. We don't have the fake tree. We don't have the real tree anymore. Sabrina's passed. We're not little anymore, so we can't fit in the old dining room. We can barely fit in the room that we have now. But our house looks great. Everything looks great, honestly. It was more, Becca gets upset about writing and then thinks about how much things have changed. I mean, I'm sitting here in my pajamas. I'm going to get dressed at some point after this is over. I'm going to work on a picture. I'm going to wrap some presents, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's Christmas Eve, man. Year's almost over. This is my 6th podcast for the Sometimes Drunk podcast. I need to actually get it onto a podcast. Next week, I will actually be doing a till midnight drawing stream. I'm going to podcast like usual, but I'm going to go right over to my Picarto after that to do some drawings. My first drawing of 2017. Or my first finished piece of 2017 is what I'm hoping to do over there. But next podcast, I'm going to be outlining like what I did this year, how I've changed, and what I'm going to do next year, because Mike is going to be partying her ass off. I don't blame her. I'd do that too if I had somewhere to party. I'll be getting drunk off my ass to make up for this week. But, I'm shrugging, doing some gesturing, like, I don't know, man. This went faster than I thought it would. But I think something that we're not going to talk about enough on here is how important storytelling and writing is. Like I said, I went to college for animation, so I learned about, screenwriting, the hero's journey, what makes a compelling character design, background design, 3D modeling, texturing, lighting, 2D and 3D animation, both of which I hope to do much more of next year. I have a lot of plans for next year. A lot of high hopes for next year. And to date this episode, I hope Carrie Fisher will still be with us next year. And I hope she'll be okay. But, 2016 has been a year, man. It did not start very good for me. And sometimes I'm wondering if maybe I'm not awake. But that's something for another day. That's something for the horror narration days. I've been listening to a lot of, shout out to some great horror narrators. Be Buster and Lazy Masquerade and Corpse Husband. Those guys are great. Creeps McPasta is pretty great too. But those are the ones that I listen to. I've been listening to a lot of Lazy Masquerade lately, and I listened to one recently about how they dreamt, like people who dreamt like portions of their lives and woke up. And sometimes I wonder if there was a specific incident that happened in January that I am actually still asleep for. Have I done any comics? McButts asks, have you done any comics or art recently? And McButts, I know that you're my only viewer right now, but because these are archived, I decide to read them out loud. I hope that doesn't get frustrating. I haven't done any comics recently, and the only art that I've been working on, I'll actually pull it up. My masterpiece, as of late, is, I'll bring it up for all to see, because it is a beautiful, beautiful work of art that will be my magnum opus, and I cannot thank my friend Sato. By the way, shout out to Shiseido, one of my best friends from college. This is what I'm working on. It's the Mona Lisa, but with Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm being paid real big kid money for this. So, and Sato, actually, the biggest sweetheart that she ever is actually paying me like more than double the amount that I have this priced at. So, shout out to Sato, the best person. I'm trying very hard to have this done by Christmas. I just need to do Green Hill Zone in the background and finish that hand and get the ears done and fix up those eyes and maybe try to get that body being presentable. But rest assured, this will be slapped on absolutely everything on my Redbubble. I already have people saying that they would totally buy prints of this because it's majestic, it's beautiful, and you know what? Now this goes over my face for the rest of the cast here for the next half hour. So you get to stare at this beauty for a good while still, if you watch the thing instead of just listen. I don't know why you would watch unless I specifically point out that I'm putting something up. But that's what I'm working on these days. I actually have a few projects that I'm going to talk about in the next podcast, things that I hope to finish hope to work on more next year. But there's a game in there. There's a comic in there. There's a visual novel that I hope to maybe at least finish the demo of that I started working on for Homestuck a while ago, maybe rewrite it and pass it along to somebody else. But I have a lot of projects. That's one of my problems, is that my brain works too fast for me, and I'm very impatient, and I need to learn to be patient. I need to learn to have some discipline. But let's get back to the main point. By myself here, I'm very meandering. And of course, I'm just talking about the little things in life. But, I think I really hit what I've wanted to talk about. Like, I'm going to be writing 2 characters. There's one comic, the comic that I want to work on, that I've been having trouble with, as I've outlined in this episode at the beginning. The comic is called Bromance. And I think that this is a good context in which to talk about it. Even if it's just supposed to be one of those slice of life, you can see it happening from a mile away kind of things. And the way I describe it is 2 best friends falling in homos with each other, because that's what it is. And you'd be surprised how much of the stuff that I come up with is inspired by Tumblr posts. To be quite honest, I have another game project in mind that's inspired by a Tumblr post called Tower Trapped. But that's for next week. Though I'm going to be talking about another one that I had while being a certain variety of intoxicated that I call Tethered. I have a lot of projects. I could just list off titles for projects. I have You Are Carcat Vantas. I have Tethered, Tower Trapped, Bromance, This Is a Story, Elpis. God, where's my list? I have them ordered in order of importance. I have a lot of Overwatch fan stuff I want to do. I have some pinups that I want to start doing to make my Patreon more appealing. I want to start doing monthly pinups. And I'm pretty much good for, like, the first year because I could just do Stardew Valley, like, characters. But that's, like, pretty niche, so I could be good for a year and just do Overwatch characters. There we go. Now I'm getting it. But, anyway, bromance. I lost the train of thought. I'm starting to get a little warm, little tipsy. Miha isn't here to scold me when I'm getting off topic. Which is something that we're also going to try to do in the new year. Stay on topic. Even though I call it Sometimes Drunk for a reason. And the subtitle is the Sometimes Drunk Art Podcast. And I decided to just keep it at Sometimes Drunk because then it's like, if we're drunk and we talk about stupid shit, that's fine. But apparently, Mihei's friends say that we meander a little too much and it's kind of annoying. So, bromance. That's actually what led me to this. That's actually also another thing that I feel like works very well for this podcast because mostly just because of the logo. The logo for bromance is also like liquor label inspired, which I am pulling up right now. Whoops. There we go. Bromance is also liquor label inspired, and it was supposed to come out in oh my god, I started concepting it in 2014. God, I'm old. And I want it to be like a summer comic kind of thing, because that's why it's called a summer ale. But bromance, as I described it, is two best friends falling in homos with each other. Now, what does that mean? It means that I saw a Tumblr post that was about how they want, like, a typical romantic comedy with a gay couple, but it's like there's no like angst about like, oh my god, I didn't know that I like guys, and there's like no like the fact that it's like a same-sex romance isn't like the main conflict of it. It's just a stupid ass rom-com just with like two guys or two girls. Just otherwise, it's not very much acknowledged. There's no gangst there, like, which is gay angst, like angst about being gay. There's no, like, conflict about people disapproving of their relationship because it's a same-sex relationship, etc., etc. And, I like the idea of that. I'll be honest, that's one of the reasons why I really, really like Yuri on Ice, is because of, how it's just treated as a naturally developing romance, and I gotta say, I like the subtlety of the romance, as unsubtle as it is. But I like the subtleties that they do, and the things that that's also going to be another topic of another cast, is how, when you see things happening like a romance in a show, you have to understand, like, why they don't just show the characters kissing on screen, because there are certain because of standards and practices, they're not allowed to show same-sex kiss on screen or something. So they have to get around it and portray it and make it clear. They have to spell it out through other means. And I'd like to talk about that during during a cast sometime. I'd like to talk about Yuri on Ice. I'd like to talk about Legend of Korra, Steven Universe, and how they made those things clear without showing an on-screen kiss, or have people saying stuff like, I love you, or through typical means, like through your cheesy rom-com means, but also while invoking cheesy rom-com tropes. But that's another day. Yuri on Ice is more blatant, though, but it's worth mentioning because it's a mainstream sports anime. Its genre is sports anime. It's not a boys' love or a yaoi genre. But also, I kind of do want to develop Yaoi on Ice a little, or no, Yaoi on Fire a little, where it's like the main couple are two girls. But I'd have to look into that one a bit. And it's fire dancing, but I thought that was funny. But Bromance is based off of the concept that they wanted to see a rom-com where it's just the same stupid, cheesy, predictable rom-com plots. And none of the conflict is brought about by the characters' sexualities. And that's something that I've always wanted to see. And that's something that I still want to see. And that's something that I want to make. And so Bromance is basically pretty much me projecting my whole life situation right now onto these characters. I want to write something about 20-somethings who graduated or dropped out of college that had to move back in with their parents, get bad jobs, and they're trying to just live. Just be people. It's a story about, like, two guys, Karsten and Samir. And Karsten and his girlfriend, it starts with Karsten and his girlfriend. And Karsten and his girlfriend Tina, they go out to dinner. And they both have something that they want to say to each other. And Karsten proposes, but Tina wanted to break up. And I just think it's funny. I just think it's really funny. So they break up. And it's not like there was another guy or anything, but then what happens, like, after that is Karsten's brokenhearted and all that stuff. His best friend Samir, like, tries to get him through it. Like, through some wacky happenstances, they fall in love with each other. Samir has his cousin Abriana, and the thing about them is their dads are... The thing is, this is one of those stories where basically all of them are XPs of Homestuck characters. Because sometimes you just come up with something that's just, like, really fun, but you just want it to be original rather than fan fiction. Which is what's happening with a lot of my stuff. I'm like, a lot of this would be really good as its own original thing. It's so far removed from the source material that you can make it original. So Abriana and Samir get mistaken for twins sometimes. They have, like, a strong family resemblance because their dads are identical twins. So they look a lot alike. But Abriana is dating Samir's ex-girlfriend from high school. And all that fun stuff. So we got some fun side characters going on. But one thing that kind of actually brought me to this conclusion was just I just wanted Samir drunkenly, like, serenading Karsten with Total Eclipse of the Heart on his lawn at 2 a.m. And it's like, dude, the cops are gonna come again if you do this shit. But, like, that's just pretty much where I want everything to go, is to that scene where it's like, you fuckhead, I love you, kind of thing. But I want things to be made cool with Tina, because one of the things that I always enjoyed was that whenever I sort of fucked things up with people that I was into, like, I told people that I liked them, and they got, like, kind of... The one thing that I can't stand is when you like someone and you don't tell them because you're afraid of it, you're just making things worse in the end. Because if you leave it all bottled up, it just gets worse. You get it worse for that person, and it'll just hurt that much more when they don't reciprocate, which I learned the hard way. But the thing that's important is learning to still be friends with people, even after that. Because the thing about friendship is that you'll have troubles, you'll have times when you're mad at each other, you'll have times when you really, really fuck up, you'll have times when you're going to be really mad at that person, but the thing is, ultimately, you're friends with them because your life is better with them in your life. So that's actually part of this, is that even though Tina could have broken up with Karsten earlier before it got too far, or anything, even if she had the best intentions, even if maybe there is a rightful reason to be upset with her, she understands that. But she still wants to be friends. And the thing is, you can still be friends. I was still friends with a lot of people that I was into who rejected me. I was still friends with the one girlfriend that I broke up with for a short time, but because, of my own fuck-ups, I ruined it with everybody. I shit the bed everywhere I go. Oh, man. But that's another thing, like another aspect of bromance. I want to put in a lot of my experiences as somebody who graduated college but wasn't able to find a job with it, who's still trying to find a job with it. Just somebody who's a little bit directionless, who has a job that they're just doing just so they could have money. Somebody who's still pursuing other interests, like this podcast and drawing and all that. I want to do just something about people who feel stuck in their life, who kind of are forced back where they grew up, you know? I mean, the entirety of the scenery in bromance is going to be based off of my hometown where I live. In just a lot of it. And that's one of the things about bromance. It's probably one of those things that's like really close to my heart as something that I'm going to really like as one of those sort of cheesy rom-com stories. I love fucking rom-coms. They're so stupid and I love them so much. I went downstairs. My mom loves rom-coms. She's always watching the Hallmark Channel, and this time of year is the best time of year for Hallmark. She loves it when they do Christmas in July, too. But one of my favorite things is I'm so familiar with all of the rom-com tropes that I went downstairs the other day. I go into the living room to play with Pepper, our dog. To play with Pepper, this dog. And I just heard 2 lines exchanged, and I knew exactly what the movie was about. Where one of the characters just says, oh, shout out to McButts, who is leaving early. Merry Christmas to McButts, and this episode will be archived, so the last 10 minutes that you miss, you could totally get back and watch that. Anyway, I was watching this movie with my mom, I wasn't watching it with her, I was just playing with Pepper briefly, and the character says, I can't do this anymore, we have to come clean. And the other character says something like, we're in too deep, we can't come clean now. Or something like that. And I'm like, they're pretending to be in a relationship to appease somebody. And they're actually falling for each other. Or one of them already liked the other one. And so, there you go. I always love the fake relationship thing, too. I'm kind of going to be writing an Overwatch fanfiction for that because of another Tumblr post that I saw. Because the thing is, there's no such thing as a bad idea, just bad execution. And so, I want to try to execute these things pretty well. I want to play into the bad rom-com tropes. But I want to also subvert them at the same time, but at the same time not. I don't know. It's hard to describe it, like the layers of meta I want to get in on this. In the end, it's just going to be a dumb rom-com, and I'm going to love it, but it's just like all the stupid shit's going to be intentional. Except for the stupid shit that isn't intentional. Because I'm a revolutionary thinker and clearly a voice of my generation. If anybody has doubts about that, about me being a voice of my generation, I refer you back to the Sona Lisa. But then again, that's not even my idea. That's me being commissioned by one of my best friends to make something really cool that I'm going to plaster on everything that I have on Redbubble. Because, I mean, it's like, who doesn't want that in their house? I mean, I get off at Staples when I get the first chance next week. And the thing is, whenever you get shit printed off at, like, Staples or something, I always want to see somebody's, like, reaction. Like, I want to see somebody react, like, to it when they see the person who actually purchased this Sonic the Hedgehog except the Mona Lisa thing. I don't know why, but it's just funny to me. And I actually put some colorization on it. Just wait until it's colorized to be like his bright blue with his green eyes and all that stuff. But in the end, that's actually what I'm writing that I have trouble for, is that Samir is like 4th gen Indian, has loosely practicing Hindu parents. Same with Aubriana. Her mom is actually like Italian American, but she's looking into her Indian heritage. So she's going to be like more in touch with the culture than Samir is in bromance. But otherwise, that's one of my writing problems that I've been having. And that's why I shared what we do on Christmas Eve, what we do on Christmas, why I shared that we call my great-grandparents Babshi and Jaji, just the small, small things. The holdovers that we have of just being of a different heritage, or of just being of a different religion, or anything like that. Wow, I like how the moment I start talking about that, everybody leaves. But that's also the other thing. Are there 4th-gen Indian families? Because, I mean, I don't know. Because here's the thing, in New Jersey also, and where I live especially, we have a high population of Eastern Europeans. So we have a high Jewish population, but we also have a high Indian population and a high Chinese population. And I think there was like one Japanese kid in my school, if that's any indication to how the Asian kids that we have are predominantly Chinese. And that's pretty much like the demographic that I was used to. Let me tell you, San Francisco was a culture shock to me, because coming back here, no way around it. We're predominantly white. And that's just like one of the fascinating things to me. The way that one of my career advisors described it to me. She was Sri Lankan, and she said that she was going to Long Island to visit family during one holiday, and she's like, yeah, I don't get it. I guess they go from one island to another, is what she said. And I'm like, hey, I'm not gonna question it. But yeah. And then sometimes you have to wonder who fucked up in immigration to give you the last name that you have. I mean, that's one of the things that gets me about how I personally brand myself. It's easy for me to brand myself because my last name is Peason. And the thing about the last name of Peason is it is a very, very uncommon last name, as I have learned throughout the years. And as I said earlier in this podcast, it's probably originated from Ireland, but the thing is, I don't even know if that was what our last name was when my family went through immigration. Back in the day, however long ago our Irish immigrant whatever went through, however far back Peason comes from. But one of the funny things to me is how it's inexplicably like just shows up in Tunisia. Or was it Tanzania? I don't know. It was Tanzania or Tunisia. I know that it was in some South African countries, or Southern African countries. Sorry, because I know South Africa is its own country. It kind of makes it confusing to talk about sometimes. Oh, also shout out to Lesotho for being like a country that's surrounded completely by another single country. I don't know anything about South Africa and Lesotho, but but every time I look at a map, I'm like, hey, Lesotho, I see you in there. You're like a little lake that's made of another country. It's kind of like how the Vatican is like its own something in the middle of Italy. Sorry, I had the sniffles. Anyway, I always like to do my final thoughts at the end of a cast, actually. At the end of the day, everybody has different experiences to draw on, and everybody will always look to something in their own life that they want to represent in their work. But at the same time, they're always going to have to look outward, to do research, to present what they want to present. Whether it's an accurate depiction, a stylized depiction, a realistic depiction, anything. Whether they want to tell a fictional account or a non-fictional account of history, whether they want to symbolically represent the things that they know and the things that they do, I mean, you're always going to have to work at it. And the thing is with that, whatever you want to convey, whatever there is like in you, it's something worth noting. It's something worth sharing, because that kind of thing is what other people will draw on when they try to find some sort of reference material for things that they want to create. So that's why I made this cast. That's why I'm casting today, because I wanted to share my small experiences as a 4th-gen Polish American. I want to share my experiences as an oldest child, even. I want to share my experience as somebody who's only ever had one grandpa, and as far as we're concerned, the other one doesn't exist. I want to share that as somebody who has tried to trace back their ancestry but has had such a terrible time of it. Ugh. And it's stuff that I want to share as someone who says, hey, man, it's okay to sort of like bastardize some aspects of my culture just because I don't really understand it. And that's what happens if you go through the ages without really knowing what your traditions or culture that you're drawing from come from. And the thing is, I want to see more experiences with that. I want to see more, like, people talking about just how their day is, or how their holidays are, or what they celebrate. I want to see more people sharing that just for the express purpose of giving someone else a good perspective to draw on. Like, not something where it's bogged down by political statements or opinions, just, here's what we do on Christmas. We do this, this, and this. And I guess we do this because of this. And it's like, here's what I call my grandparents because of, I guess, this. Here's what I call my great-grandparents. Like, I call my great-grandparents Bopshi and Jaji, even though Bopshi and Jaji are used to talk about grandparents. They're the terms for grandpa and grandma, Bopshi and Jaji. My mom would always call them Bopshi and Jaji. But so would my cousin Ben. My cousin Ben is actually my mom's cousin, but he's the same age as my younger sister. Because my Grammy was the oldest child, and then my Aunt Judy, Ben's mom, was 8 when my Grammy got married and had our first kid. So they're closer in age to Aunt Judy than to their mother. And so Aunt Judy was kind of like the much older fifth sister to my mom and her sisters. So because my mom and my cousin Ben, it was just easier for all of us great-grandchildren to call them Bopshi and Jaji, because our parents always called them Bopshi and Jaji. So that's why we called our great-grandparents by the incorrect titles of Bopshi and Jaji, because I guess when you get that old, it just doesn't matter anymore, too. They had like 20 great-grandchildren, man. And they lived to see all of them. Yeah, my Jaji died at like 92, my Bopshi at 86, my grandma at 86 with 7 great-grandchildren. I'm glad she got to see them. My Jaji also, my grandpa also, I think, at 86. He was in his 80s. He saw a good amount of his great-grandchildren, and then my Grammy and my grandma just this past year, actually. I'm kind of sad that my Grammy never got to see any great-grandchildren, but she saw a lot of grandchildren. So that's good. And she was proud of all of us. That one's a story, man, let me tell you. Oh, and fun fact, the Pope died on my birthday one year. Yeah! Which I mentioned in a previous cast. But anyway. Sometimes, if you're a writer, or if you're just interested in storytelling, or anything like that, some of the things that you might not think are remarkable, but notice are different from other people's experiences are worth sharing. Because that could just be what somebody needs to know to kickstart their writing, or to add to a character, or anything like that. So, that's why I created this one blog. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. There was this one blog that I created that I still need to post to and to fix up, but it's for the express purpose of sharing these experiences. I'll link it in the description below, but if the internet will cooperate with me for 1 second, I will read off the name of it. It's called What Should We Know? Is what the blog is called. And let's see, let's just get it going. There's no posts to it. It's not particularly pretty. But it's a place for people to look for the experiences that they want to share. It's for people to share the experiences that they have, and it's for people who are looking for particular like situations so that they can feel like more confident in the characters they're writing. So I'll be putting that in the description. I'll be fixing it up in this last week before the new year. And stick around next week. I'll be doing another podcast. Well, those are my final thoughts. Either way, next week I'll be doing another cast. And it'll be the last one of this year, our 7th episode. That means that we'll have been going for about 2 months, almost. Consistently, which I'm very proud of. So, yeah, check that one out. I'm going to actually transition from a solo episode to a till midnight drawing stream on my Picarto. So that'll be something to look forward to, I hope. We have some late watchers, I'm sorry, but we're wrapping up. And take a look below in the description at the archived episode. Actually, I'll put it in here now. Let's see. In the description added just now and put in the chat is the blog that I described. It is currently blank, but it's called whatshouldweknow.tumblr.com, and it's going to be specifically for submitting experiences that you want to share about your family or just your heritage or anything like that. It's purely for writing purposes and narrative purposes. So I think that would be really cool. And I also want it to be a place where people can feel like they can ask for whatever experiences they want to see. Like, if they're looking for if they can't find, like, a perspective that they really want to explore with a character, they can submit asking for a question, asking a question or looking for it. So that was the whole intent of the blog. I know I'm going to post some of my experiences, but I'm also going to make a post about what I'm looking for in terms of getting bromance off the ground.